Hello and welcome to this lecture. Before we start going into the full implementation of the API Gateway Service, we just really want to do a refresher of what the API Gateway Service for our microservice application will do. Now, for us, the API Gateway Service, as you know, will be responsible for some features, okay? For example, we know that all requests coming from the client must go through the API gateway. We are not going to allow requests directly from the client to any microservice. So they must all pass through the API gateway, whether it's the request response or it's the Socket.io WebSocket connection. Okay. Now, communication between microservice and other, or the API gateway and other microservices, will be the request response pattern. Okay. It will take the request response pattern. We are going to use HTTP. It's possible if you can still implement communication between microservice and your API gateway to use event-driven pattern. But for us, we are going to use the request response pattern, but the communication between the other services will be event-driven. Okay, so yeah, you've seen something like this before, but just give to give an overview of what the API gateway is and what it will do. Okay, so here we have our client, and here the client represents your mobile application or your browser application. Okay, and then communication between the client and API gateway will be over HTTP or HTTPS and Socket.io. Okay, because there are some services that would require us setting up Socket.io. Okay, and the Socket.io connection as well will not go from the client to any of the microservices. No, we are not going to allow that. It will go through the API gateway, and then from the API gateway to the microservice, and from the microservice back to the API gateway, and then back to the client. Okay, and the API gateway will connect to our Elasticsearch Kibana instance. Okay, so it will connect to it, and also possibly it will likely connect also to Redis, even though it's not displayed here in this diagram. It will connect to Redis as well. And the API gateway, I don't think it's going to connect to our event driven system, RabbitMQ. So API gateway will not connect because mostly the communication will be HTTP based. Okay, but it's going to connect to our Elasticsearch Kibana. Okay, so that is how the API gateway implementation will be. It will be responsible. We are going to set up our controllers. Okay, so we are going to set up controllers so that it can use that controllers to send requests to the respective microservice. It's going to have routes. Okay, routes where it listens for HTTP request from the client, and then routes that it uses to send to the respective microservice. Okay, and then we're going to create our services. The services will just be services to send messages and receive messages from our microservices. Okay, so the implementation of this API gateway it will not be difficult. It will not be difficult. It will not have its own kind of it will not have some kind of difficult implementation. Just it receiving requests and sending responses. Okay, that is what the API gateway will do. And now for the structure of the API gateway that we're going to create, I will use the object-oriented structure. The notification service will just use the functional structure, but here I will use the object-oriented structure to implement the API gateway.